Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Portia Monique, and today we'll be speaking with Nicole Gillyard, also known as the Prophetista, who's also the CEO of By the Numbers CPA. Welcome to the show, Nicole.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So, I want to talk to you about a number of things, but the very first thing I want to talk to you about is why do they call you the Prophetista?
So the Prophetisa was created because I wanted to have something to hide behind and come from behind the CPA desk where I could talk to people, do mentoring, do coaching, come to them online on TikTok and do different conversations about tax issues, CPA stuff, and business stuff just to keep people engaged. And, with being a CPA, that's kind of a more restricted type of industry. So I
Mhm.
use the Prophetisa just to kind of get out and do more with the community and put more information out there so business owners can have real time information and grow their businesses.
I love it. It has a very nice ring to it.
Yeah.
Now, we are at the top of 2025, and we know that a new administration is coming in um, very soon.
Mm.
So, we want to talk about tax strategies and wealth building, right? So, as a certified CPA, what are some of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs and small business owners make during tax season, and how can they avoid them?
So the biggest mistake I see, and it doesn't happen at tax season, it comes up to tax season where they're not keeping track of, the income that's coming in, the expenses, right? A lot of people are just out there making their money, which,
Right.
that's what they start their business to do. So what I try to teach throughout the year is like, let's get those accounting numbers in order. Let's get that accounting system in place that will do the work for you. It'll pull
Mhm.
your income transactions. It'll pull your expenses from your bank statement, those type of little tax tips so that at the end of the year, it's just pushing a button for that P&L. And that's the biggest mistake I see.
Yeah.
Because then it runs into, yeah, you got all this income, but how can you prove it on the books for that creditor, for that loan, for that, those things we need to build our businesses. So that's the biggest mistake. The next mistake is not knowing your business entity, right? If you're in the right one. So a lot of people start
Okay.
with LLCs, right?
Hmm.
With LLCs, there's still that self-employment tax. So once you start generating income, you have to take that look and make sure if you need to change your entity to a corp, to an S corp, to take
Okay.
advantage of some of those, different taxes that'll take place with that.
So, what would prompt us to do something like that? So, I'm operating as a small business owner. I'm out here, like you said, making my money. I wouldn't think to change from an LLC to something different. Is that where you come into play?
It is, but the number one indicator is when you do your tax return and you're showing that business income and that SC tax get added on, right? That's a
Mm-hmm.
good indication to say, hey, I'm paying too much in taxes.
Okay.
Or at least to make you feel uncomfortable enough to say, hey, I need to look at this a little bit closer. And then you would call a professional or, do research. And there's, tons of information on TikTok. I'm not saying follow everything, but there's just a huge following about, when to change to an S corp.
Gotcha. And as we know, TikTok is on the slate to be banned very quickly. So we're waiting and watching to see what happens there. But with also changes to tax laws, rules on the horizon, what key updates should individuals and businesses be aware of for 2025?
Well, what I will say is when the Trump administration is in play, it seems to be beneficial to business owners, right?
Hmm. Okay.
Depending on where you are in the cusp of things. Okay, let me say that.
Hmm.
What I will say is that as this administration comes in, it's going to be important for businesses that do a lot of import, right? With the tariffs that we don't know what those tariffs are going to be per se. We just know what he's talking about.
Hmm.
But anytime there's a tariff, and the thing about tariffs is this is not new. This is not something that Trump pulled out his pocket, and it's not going to like start the next war. It's just tariffs have been used to help generate income for the government. For number one.
Hmm.
Number number two, the goal is to protect the domestic businesses, right? There's also so those are the two pros, but there's like several cons because
Okay.
number one, the other countries can retaliate and put their own tariffs on our imported goods to them. Okay.
Mhm.
Number two, the increase in the amount of those goods cost our small businesses. It's going to affect all businesses, but the smaller businesses that depend on those lower cost items from overseas to make their product and provide their services are going to get hit because it's going to decrease their profit margin.
Mm-hmm.
Time that happens, it trickles down to the consumer, right? We end up,
Right.
right? So with inflation, increase in costs, it's just this cycle. So those are the main concerns about the tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
From another tax standpoint, on the individual side, the administration tends to take away those itemized deductions that we're so used to using on our taxes, right?
Mm.
Contributions really aren't impacting the mortgage interest. When you buy a home, you buy the, nice house with the high interest. That's not
Mm-hmm.
for taxes. Property taxes are limited, the write-off. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just all these things. So it's really good to talk to a tax preparer and do some tax planning, some tax,
Yeah.
just to kind of make sure that you minimize the impact as much as you.
Absolutely. And I was just going to ask, what are some actionable strategies for maximizing those deductions? You told us to talk to a tax preparer, but are there more that we can try to do to offset some of those, with staying compliant with the IRS and the regulations?
Yep. So the IRS, the biggest thing with the IRS is, they just want to make sure that number one, you're reporting all your income. Number two, the tax code allows you to take advantage of, different tax deductions and credits. So it's really just staying in tune to what those are. With this new administration, there's not a lot of changes to credits per se. And I don't think when they get in office on the 20th that there's going to be a huge impact this tax season, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the changes that are proposed will affect 2025.
Okay.
A number of changes that's coming through for business owners is this new, not new, but modified sick time leave.
Okay.
Requirements that employers have to have in place to pay their workers for sick time. It used to be where smaller businesses weren't included in that number, but they're changing that requirement. So a lot of smaller businesses will be included. And of course, that's at added cost for employees, right? So just looking at that, making sure the number of employees you have, not saying fire people, but just kind of making sure that you're in compliance and what that's going to cost is going to look like,
Mm-hmm.
set it somewhere else.
Now, you said that's an added cost for employees because the employers will pass off the cost to the employees. Will that also be an added cost to employers?
I should have said employers, I'm sorry. It's an added
Oh,
cost to the employer to have that staff, right?
yeah.
Right,
Okay.
because then they're required to compensate them for time off, where they normally would have, an accumulation of hours before they can get that time off. So that's changing. Um,
Right.
yeah, so state to state to state will make that determination. So that's just something to watch on the horizon.
So what do we do? Move out the country? Like, what
Just,
do we
no,
do?
a lot of governmental lobbyists and all that are kind of fighting this for the small business owners,
Okay.
but it's something that they're trying to pass. Because on the governmental side, they're trying to help families make more money.
Yeah,
Make
of
it
course.
easier. When they have to take off, they still get paid. But on the
Hmm.
business side, it's like you have to balance it out, and they're not trying to balance it out. They're just trying to impose this new thing. So I think for the most part, small business owners are just going to get hit a lot of the changes that are coming through. It might not affect the big corporations, but the smaller businesses will be affected.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And then I want to touch on this this thing that's gone crazy on social media in terms of the BOI, but I do want to ask you this last question as it pertains to taxes and the role that it plays in building long-term wealth. How can women in particular leverage tax planning to achieve financial independence?
I want to, this question comes up a lot, and a lot of people tie wealth management and wealth building to taxes. Um, and I don't know if that's essentially the way it should go. It should be more so in building those assets that are going to appreciate over time. Tax strategy just comes into play to one, keep you in compliance, to number two, pay the least amount of taxes, right? Paying the
Mm-hmm.
least amount of taxes is what kind of leaves you to this money to continue to build wealth. Okay.
Right.
So if in a business sense, it's going to be, working with a tax specialist to make sure that number one, all your income is coming in so that you know what base number you're working with, right?
Mm-hmm.
To
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to reduce your taxable income at the end of the year. So making sure that, your accounting system in place, all of your expenses are being accounted for and understanding what things you can write off. That's the number one thing. A lot of people are fearful of the IRS. They think it's a scheme to take all their money. But what the IRS is saying, if you deem it reasonable for your business to do this activity and it's a cost to it, it is deductible, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's looking at those, those meetings and assets that you buy. You can do bonus depreciation where you can write off 50% in the year you buy it. That helps.
Mm-hmm.
That helps an immediate reduction of your taxable income.
Mm.
There are credits for hiring certain staff for, if they've been off for a period of time. There's employer credits for if you bring somebody into the workforce who hasn't worked for a while. There's just so much, right? But
Yeah.
all just kind of making sure that, number one, your system's in place to account for everything, and then working with the specialist to kind of make sure you're, capitalizing on it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Now we can get into some of the good stuff, right? So there's so much out there, social media, internet wise, when it comes to this BOI thing. What is it? Do we need to do it? Why do we need to do it? When do we have to do it by? All of those questions.
Right. So this BOI, it has us dizzy too. So
Yes.
you understand.
Mm-hmm.
So let me give the reason for the BOI. So FinCEN, right? There's a lot of terrorism. There's a lot of shell companies that are funding these, terrorist actions. There's just white crime and period for embezzlement and things like that. So it costs the government a lot of money to, number one, find the crime. Number two, find out who owns these shell companies. Okay. So the goal of the BOI, the Beneficial Ownership Information Report, is they're putting the responsibility on the business owner to put their information in this system so they know who owns what business, what amount of interest, where, if it's foreign, if it's domestic. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to be just a database for the law enforcement to use. It's not supposed to be public information for every, entity that could tap into it. So the requirement started off to where we had to have it by December 31st, 2025, if you had your business prior to December 31st, 2022. Okay. Then people started opposing it and taking it to court. You know what I mean? So those court decisions where they deemed it unconstitutional was only for those particular plaintiffs that were involved in it, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Then there was a court decision that involved all small businesses, okay?
Mm.
Right. And they deemed it unconstitutional, right? So
Yeah.
that allowed us to right now be in a state of where it's just voluntary
Okay.
to do the report as of today.
Okay. Right.
It's voluntary. What I expect is once the new administration is in, once this final court case comes through, it'll be deemed whether or not it's unconstitutional for all of us or constitutional, and then there'll be a new date for us to finalize it. I've been telling clients, if you're not doing anything wrong, just go ahead and submit your information. I know that there's this whole thing where people want to be anonymous.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I believe it's going to come down to where they do require us to fulfill that requirement. But
Yeah. Eventually it's gonna come down. Yeah. Okay. And so your suggestion is to just become compliant. Just go ahead and do it. How do we get started with that? Where do we go? Does it cost? Where do we put our information in? Is there someone we can call? Like, is it online only? How do we get started with becoming compliant?
sure. So it's online. It's going to be FinCEN, so FINCEN, FinCEN.gov. That's where you will go. And actually, matter of fact, it's FinCEN.gov/BOI. It will take you direct to the site, right? All the information is there. The historical information is there. The guidelines, what information you need, and there's also the link there to actually do the filing. Okay.
Perfect.
But I will say, is a number of companies like myself, we own a number of businesses, right? So what they allow you to do is create a FinCEN ID. That ID will capture all your personal information that's needed for all the entities that you have to file for. I literally did 5 businesses and I did it in 20 minutes. So it's not a long process. But I want people to understand that there's no fee for it. There's these companies, things come out, these companies, they charge you like $250 to do this filing that takes 5 minutes. So what I want people to know is there's no fee for it if you go to the direct site.
Wonderful. Now that we got that out the way. So you answered all of our questions. We know where to go. We know that there's no cost to it. We know that right now it's on a voluntary basis. Eventually, we'll probably have to do it depending on what this incoming administration is going to ensure that we do. But I think for the most part, we covered it all. So thank you so much for letting us know. Now, I want to talk about you inspiring your a challenge of rehabbing a Sea Park business hub. So let's talk about that. What
Yeah.
inspired it, and what has the journey taught you about, number one, resilience, and number two, entrepreneurship?
Well, let me first say that I have a love for small business and small
Okay.
business owners, our struggles. So I always put myself in a loop. So when I moved from Michigan is where I'm from, Detroit, I
Okay.
moved to Atlanta about 2 years ago, right?
Hmm.
And I wanted to find a place to move my practice and started looking at lease space in Atlanta. And
Okay.
I was just amazed at the cost
Mm.
for leasing space in Atlanta. And I'm not talking about big space. This is like 10 by 10, like just small spaces. And so I said to myself, okay, do I want to incur this cost or do I want to buy something? So I
Yeah.
started looking at properties. Mind you, that's a whole different market too. Of course, those costs are astronomical as well. But
Hmm.
I found a property in College Park, and College Park is under revitalization, just like Midtown Detroit was.
Okay. Hmm.
So it's just a good time to get in. And this property had been vacant for a while. It was an eyesore to the community. And I just saw it. And you know how you tap into something and you just see the potential, right?
Yes. Yes.
My husband, everybody thought I was crazy. So I went into the
That's
property.
a sign, but that's a sign that you're on the right track. As soon as people think you crazy, like, okay, I got it. Let's keep
This is
going.
it, right?
Right.
And so it started the journey of, again, I feel like it's like a journey that I have to take to help someone else understand the process, because the
Hmm.
journey of trying to get funding for something you're trying to do to help upbuild a community was just, and I'm a CPA, so the documents they asked for, I got it. I got my business plan, I got my projections, I got my financial, I got everything you need is here. But I went through so much trouble, and you don't want to make it racial. But when you are in the business of helping other people get these same dollars and you know what you go, you create a report, they get the funding. It's not a huge process. And then when you
Yeah.
do it, there's all these red tape, all these back. So it's been like 4, 5 no's. And I finally got to SBA funding. Okay. So that journey, I can definitely help someone else understand and get through.
Wonderful.
Even with that SBA funding, I still started coming out of pocket because this was so important to me. And I wanted
Yeah.
to get it going, show the different funders that I had invested my own money into it.
Hmm.
So the overall goal for this building, Sea Park Business Hub, will be to have affordable professional office space for other business owners. My practice will be on the upper level. The lower level will have an education center. I'm really big into teaching business education,
Yes.
travel to different parts, of the United States teaching these courses. And so I'm bringing it to Atlanta, to College
Nice.
Park, and connecting with other entities to just kind of have a resource for small businesses to come to and
Hmm.
run their businesses affordably. So I'm super excited about it. I feel like it's going to be a great thing for the community, and a lot of businesses that come through there will, be able to run their business and have lower costs for the space and still
Well,
have.
I love it.
Mhm.
So when can the community expect it to be open?
So we expect our launch to be May 17th.
Oh, congratulations.
Yeah. So renovation is still in play, and you got to get the interior decorators, because I wanted to be a very elegant, nice space,
Yeah.
even though it's, considered, affordable for the people that come in. So I'm super excited about it.
I love it. So, having gone through this process, what advice would you give to other entrepreneurs interested in investing in commercial real estate or starting community-driven projects such as this?
I would say number one, buckle in and be prepared for the long haul. It's not a quick process, especially if you're dealing with SBA 7A funding.
Yeah.
Um, have your things in order. Have your financials in order. They want 3 years of your
Wow.
financials. They want 3 years of your tax returns. They want that business plan, understanding how you, plan to pay back this loan, right? What your
Hmm.
mission is in building this business. They want all that. So just have your things in order. And then just know how to speak to them, right? I found a lot of the questions they would ask would be almost challenging my purpose and mission in doing what I'm doing, and you just have to be able to respond. And once
Yeah.
you respond in a way that they understand that you know what you're talking about,
Hmm.
not a hard process with these underwriters. Okay,
Hmm.
that's number one. Number two, and then if you don't really have the capital to invest in yourself, because they want to see that you're putting into the
Skin
business.
in the game. Yeah.
So it's saving those dollars, being able to show that you have something to put in for your equity investment. That's very important.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's like 10%, if you can do 20, that's awesome. But you may not have to use it if they see that you at least have it. That's the crazy part. So that's what I'll say is just make sure things are in order.
Yes. And then what about the resilience piece, right? Because of course, when you take on endeavors like this, you learn a lot about yourself, the process, making sure that you're being resilient, persistent, and all of that. So what did you learn throughout this process about resilience and entrepreneurship?
I would love to sit here and say that, had it all figured out and I was super confident, but I'm telling you, this is a process where faith, understanding that you have a purpose in what you're doing and holding on to that purpose no matter what is where that resilience will kick in. And it will kick in because there's going to be some doors you knock on and they're going to say no, right? They're going to
Yeah.
say,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, they're going to say, it won't work or, the business plan doesn't make sense, but just keep going because there's going to be someone that says, oh, I get you and get what you're trying to do. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's being resourceful. I could not have done this just on my own. It's networking, it's talking to people, it's being able to give somebody else what my vision is and they tap into it and they talk to someone else.
Yeah.
So it's really about building those relationships too. Right. And
I love
I think for me, it was a fear of taking that step outside of my comfort zone. I'm not a
it.
person that's just gonna walk up to you and start talking. But
Mm-hmm.
now, because of what I'm trying to do and the importance of it to me, I'm stepping out of that comfort zone. So it's all the gambit. They're going to be nice. You're sitting up looking at the ceiling, like trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
You just give the next thing and keep going. But yeah, it will definitely test you.
Yeah. I think that's one of the smallest things, but it's also the biggest thing you just touched on. You just keep going, right? Because it's really small in terms of minor in terms of the step that you need to take. Like you just have to keep going, but it's also huge in terms of what do I do next, right? And so if you just revert back to just keep going, you'll eventually get to where you need to be. So great advice. And then in terms of your mindset when you take on projects like this, right? Because you have your business, you have your family life, your mom, sister, auntie, wife, like all of those things, you have to take care of you too. So in terms of specifically women, what key mindset shifts are necessary for them to go from surviving, taking the next step, keep moving to actually thriving financially?
I think for us as women, we are so used to doing everything and
Mm-hmm.
just doing it that sometimes when we can't control the next step or what's happening, that's when we kind of not lose it, but we kind of feel off kilter.
Mm-hmm.
I would say the mindset has to be that you're not going to be able to control everything,
Mm.
right?
Mm. I got chills on that one. I
Yeah, but
got chills on that one.
but
Mm-hmm.
you control your reaction to everything
Mm.
that comes your way, right? So when, things are kind of crazy, like you said, we have our hands in so many pots and they're all coming at you at one time. It's important for me to compartmentalize at that moment. Like right now, I'm focused on this hat,
Mm-hmm.
despite my mom's finding out she has, an issue, or my husband has an issue, or my daughter's going through something. At
Mm-hmm.
this moment, right now, I'm focused on this, and that's how you
Yeah.
have to be, or otherwise, you're going to be spread all over the place and get nothing done.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Great.
yeah, so that's how I kind of get through things, and I'm really good at writing things down, right?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of I know it sounds real minor, but prioritizing what I'm focused on at that moment helps me get it all done, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. So
Yes.
that's the mindset. Is just let it go. You're not gonna control everything. It don't always have to be
Compartmentalize. Yeah.
pretty. And get it done the
Get
best.
it done. Take that next step, compartmentalize, focus, tap in. I like to call it lock in and get it done. So as we're ramping down this interview, I have two more questions for you. And in terms of business owners and in terms of giving them some advice. So what are your top 3 tips for business owners and individuals to prepare financially for the year ahead?
Let's see some tax tips. I would say on the business owner side, this is going to be the year where, you really want to focus in on, I guess the word I want to use is reinvesting in the business,
Mm,
if you will. Pouring into the assets that you need, pouring into the human capital that you need. And when I say that, I know that automatically says spending money.
yeah.
In terms of the changes that are going to be coming in the, years to come, I would just say building your business the way you want it to be.
Mhm.
Okay. Making sure, I'm going to say it again, that accounting systems in place. I'm a CPA, that's my thing, because your finances are the heart of your business, right? And once you get to a point in your business where you need that additional funding, these are going to be the things they're asking for. What are your expenses look like? How are you going to pay the monies back? Because we always want to use other people's money. That's one of the key things we do to build our businesses, to contribute to wealth generation. And I'm going to say too, get your house in order. A lot of times, and I'm not into cliches, and the cliche right now is business, business, business. You do this, you do this, you get the credits, you get the write-offs, blah, blah, blah. But it's also having your personal life. Do you have the life insurance? Do you have the will in place? Do you have the health directive in place if something happens to you? That's all a part of generation wealth too. So making sure that you have the life insurance you need, making sure that you have a budget that you're working off of, making sure that you're building that reserve in case something happens. That's personal and business. Anything can happen in
Mhm.
business too. You could lose that staff person. You could, have a cost that comes up that you didn't expect, right? So building those reserves. So I like to tap into that too. Just number one, making sure your house is in order. Number three, business is in order. You have your accounting system in play. You tapped into tax strategies, working with a professional. Don't be afraid to work with a professional. A lot of people are into, saving costs by not hiring that CPA, that attorney, things like that. But you need those type of people. And I don't want to make it seem like everything's so costly when you work with a professional. Have the
Mhm.
conversation, have the free consultation, and see exactly what you need. But work with professionals. Let's see, what's another thing? I guess the thing is, since this administration is coming in and we don't know the exact changes that are going to be imposed, our
Mhm.
ear to that, keeping our ear to our state, keeping our ear to our federal, to those changes that are going to be coming up. And, when those things come down the pipeline, again, talking to a professional to kind of make sure they're putting things in place.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, we appreciate you. Those were some great tips. You definitely educated us on what it is that we need to do with our BOI, how,
Mhm.
as business owners, the top 3 tips: keeping your house in order, as women, making sure that we are taking care of business, but we also need to take care of ourselves and compartmentalize, lock in, get things done. So, my last question is for you: what legacy do you hope to leave through your work as the Propertista and through initiatives like the Sea Park Business Hub?
I always want to leave the impression that I made a difference.
Mhm.
Not so much for accolades, but just for the purpose of knowing that whatever purpose I'm here for, I did touch somebody,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
Somebody benefited from something I said, somebody benefited from something I did, some sacrifice I made helped somebody else. So it's just all about touching lives in a way, and not
Yeah.
so much in the forefront. I'm very in the background. I'll do anything for you. I'll give you the shirt off my back, and I don't really want you to say my name. So I think for that, that's my thing, just touching lives in a positive way.
Well, you have certainly done that today. We appreciate you and all of the tips and tricks that you gave us. We will definitely be implementing those. And before we get out of here, let us know, where can we follow you, find more information, keep in contact with you, and then follow your journey, social media wise and otherwise.
Okay, I made it super easy on all my socials. It's the Prophetista. That's Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, the Prophetista.
Mhm.
And my website for my practice is www.bythenumbers with a Z CPA.com.
Love it. www by the numbers with a Z, CPA.com. Nicole Gillyard, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for stopping by. We appreciate you, and we will be keeping in contact with you and making sure that we're following your journey. Take care.
Take care.